Hello there! And welcome back to another video! This week I'm going to be doing another tutorial, trying to be helpful type of video, and I'm going to be covering how to paint skin. And I think I'm the most comfortable in terms of painting things to paint skin, so I thought there was a lot of things I could share on this topic. So really quickly, I'm just sketching out 3 busts of 3 of my characters, and they each have a different skin tone, so that I'm going to be able to show the colours that I pick and how I approach doing tan skin, darker skin and pale skin. And then also I'm going to do a little mannequin of where to blush, and I'll get into that a bit more later, but I'm just really speeding through this sketching part and doing things like the eyes and the hair and things that like this video doesn't really focus on. If you do want a tutorial on how to do hair and stuff like that, let me know and I'll get to it. This tutorial sort of skips the whole drawing the face sort of thing because I just sped through it. Again, if you want my take on how to draw a face, let me know and I'll do that. So we're going to be starting out with the quote-unquote tanned skin color. This might be a little bit light for your definition of tanned, but it's a little bit more tan than a lot of very pale anime characters, so I think it's a good middle ground to approach. So this is my character Zeke, and he's going to be our first model in this tutorial. So the first color that I picked was sort of the base color. I know some people tend to like their base color to be the shadow color. They find it easier to paint the lights instead of painting the shadows. I've just gotten very used to painting the shadows on the lighter colors instead of painting the lighter colors on the shadows. So the first color I approach is like the second to lightest-ish color. Then the second color I picked was the first shadow color, and the first shadow color is skewed more towards red than the base color. So if your base color is peachy orangey, the shadow is going to be darker, more saturated and more red. Then after that, I put that first shadow color in the shadowy areas, like around the nose, around the sides of the face, under the chin, around the collarbones, that kind of thing. I go to the deeper shadow color, and the deeper shadow color I think adds a lot of dimension and a lot of life. So that one goes a lot more towards red. It's almost like a dark desaturated purple. So it goes a lot more towards red, and you use that one very sparingly. I find that just right under the chin, a little bit under the nose, and in the like more recessed parts of the face, like right over where your eyelids sit, and maybe inside of the ear, kind of the shell of the ear. I find that those are the places that deep color best suits. The next color that I pick is a color that's somewhere in between the base color and the first shadow color, but it's more saturated, and it's kind of like a transition shade. Like you use those in makeup a lot. It's a transition shade between your first shadow and your base tone, but it's more saturated, and it's called subsurface scattering. And what it is light penetrates the skin, bounces off the blood vessels and jumps back to your eye. So adding this layer of more saturated color between your base tone and your shadows adds a lot of life, makes it look like skin, look alive, and I find it's very important. Like if you shine a flashlight through the thin part of your skin between your fingers, sort of, you can see that it's transparent to an extent. So the subsurface scattering is my biggest cheat for making skin look the most alive. The next color that I pick is the highlight color, that it's lighter, more well, not necessarily less saturated, but more towards yellow. So for the shadows, if you notice, we went towards red, with the highlights we're going towards yellow, and it's sort of like the direction of where you go depends on your lighting scheme. This is a very standard basic lighting scheme that I feel is translatable to most of your needs, but it applies to different sorts of, it's just hue shifting. If your shadows go towards one direction, your highlights should go towards the other, and in typical lighting situations like indoor lighting or sun lighting, it goes like that. And next up we have the blush. In between then and now I just blended out some of the colours, but the blush I picked just a very light pink, and I put it on a layer on top of all my skin, and I put it to multiply, and I blushed the cheeks, the nose and the tops of the ears and the tops of the shoulders. And then the last step that I did was I picked a very very dark red, and I put a layer clipped on top of the sketch lines that I did, and I made my sketch lines to where they pertain to the skin be that very dark red. So that's how I approach painting tan skin. Next we're going to be moving on to painting darker skin, and this is going to be featuring my character Aries, but it follows a lot of the same steps just with the different base colors. So I grabbed a sort of base tone that's not too dark, but it's not light skin either for my dark skin character Aries, and I filled that in. And then for her base shadow color, I'm also going more towards red and more saturated but also darker, so it's the same sort of relationship of the colors that you'd find in the tan skin, of going darker in value, more saturated, and shifted towards red from where the color is. I find that with darker skin tones you can have just as many kinds of undertones, but they're harder to be able to notice if somebody's got more of a yellow undertone or more of a red undertone, more of an orange undertone, if you're not like familiar with it. So I would really recommend studying yourself on finding which kinds of undertones you can work with best and which suit your characters and which ones are the nicest for your darker skin characters. For the placement of the shadows, I'm not really focusing as much, but again, under the chin, under the nose, towards the sides of the face. Aries, I drew her in a 3/4 view, and I decided to make her lighting scheme a little bit more dramatic, but I did want to focus this video more on selecting colors, and her shadow scheme changes a lot more as I go blending, but it's still, I find, an accurate representation of how to paint darker skin. One thing that you're going to find with darker skin characters is that because they've got deeper skins, you're going to encounter a lot more contrast than you would with a lighter skin character. But then again, similar to the tan skin, we're going to select a deeper shadow color, which is again a lot more towards red. In Aries' case, it even went down to like the pink area of the Richter scale, and then very desaturated. And then also, like with the last one, we're going to do the subsurface scattering, where I grab the mid-tone color between the base color and the first shadow, and I saturate it basically to add a little more life to the skin, make it look like there's blood beneath the skin. And then lastly, with the highlight color, the highlight also went more towards yellow, and the gap in value between the base color and the highlight I feel is greater than the one for the tan skin, again because I said with darker skin you can get more contrast. So after that, I just placed the colors where they would go on the skin, and now I'm just doing some quick blending to make it look a little bit more natural, because I just slapped, this is usually my process for coloring skin. I pick out my colors, I slap them roughly where they're meant to go, and then I work on blending them in and kind of refining it. And actually I think that this dark skin is the one that turned out best out of this tutorial. I really do recommend using references and stuff like that when you're trying this stuff out for the first time. And then also, like with the tan skin, we're blushing the face, so again blushing the nose, the cheeks, the tops of the ears, and tops of the shoulders, and then the lips as well. And I like to, when I blush the nose and the lips, I like to erase away the blush for where the highlight is, so that it doesn't get flat, because even though your skin is more red in those areas, it's still affected by light and shadow in the same way. And if you're using in Photoshop or whatever digital program you use, if you're using the multiply layer, it can cover up your highlight, so I will go back and erase. And now lastly, we're going with my character Chrome to do pale skin. And again, there's a lot of instances in illustration where you're going to be doing a lot paler skin than what I drew Chrome as. I feel like this is a little bit more naturalistic, so I picked a base color. The shadow color, similar to the other two paintings before it, is more towards red, more saturated and darker. I find that if you want to have pale skin not look sickly, you're better off going for more pinkish undertones. If you want somebody to look sickly, then you would rather make it very desaturated or sort of yellowy in the shadows. But because I want my skin to look very much alive, I do try to make sure that I maintain my shadows going towards red. After doing the core shadows, we also move on to the deeper shadow, and I feel like this is the most important. Like, it doesn't matter if you do it for tan skin, dark skin. If you're doing pale skin, I feel like this is where doing the darker desaturated shadow is the most important, because it adds a lot more dimension. So again, it goes a lot more towards red and a lot darker, very desaturated, and you use it very sparingly, and I feel like it adds a lot of depth to the skin. And then also, like in the tanned and the dark skin, we have the subsurface scattering effect, and here it might look kind of neon and out of place, but I promise that when I blend it, it'll fit in perfectly. And lighter skin does tend to be a little bit more transparent, so it does show blush more prominently, and it shows the subsurface scattering in a more visible way, so it kind of ends up looking like that. And again, with the highlights, I find highlights are the most challenging in pale skin because the base tone is already so light, but even then there's a little bit of an opportunity to go lighter and more towards yellow, so that's what I did. And then again, similar to the other ones, after I slap all my colours down, I just go through blending them to try to make them seem natural. And then we go for the blush. And if you can't get like this blending technique down, or if your skin doesn't quite look right with all these colours, then don't worry about it. The more you practice it and the more you study real life, the more you'll be able to trust your eye to make sure things work. And then lastly, again, like the other ones, we grab a very dark red colour to put on top of where the sketch lines pertain to the face, to reduce the amount of like desaturatedness that comes with the black sketch lines, because of the red sketch lines it looks more alive than black sketch lines. And now we're going to this little mannequin face and this mannequin body that I just sketched out, because I wanted to sort of highlight the areas where you would add the blushing, which I feel adds a lot of life. So you want to do it on the nose, on the cheekbones, on the tops of the ears, on the lips, and then when you go full body, you want the tips of your toes, the soles of your feet, your knees, the tips of your fingers around your knuckles, on your elbows, around your crotch area, nipples, over the shoulders, and then where you do it in the face. So those are the areas where I would recommend adding more redness in your skin tones, or whatever colour the skin that you are painting blushes, if you're doing something more supernatural. And adding that kind of colour change makes things look more real, more alive, so I feel that it was important to highlight. So this is the finished tan skin featuring my character Zeke, who is blonde and green-eyed. This is the finished dark skin, which I'm still so happy with. I think this is my favourite one in the entire video. And then this is the finished pale skin, and I will put a link in my description to download just this finished image, so you can eyedrop the colours and you can have the swatches to your disposal if you find it useful. And yeah, I really hope that these techniques and these colour relationships are something that you can utilise in your own painting. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all next week.